Today we're going to be doing some P40 modeling, just like what I did in a recent video. So to start, you're going to need a blueprint of the airplane, and then you're going to start off with a cube. I like to make one side significantly different, like this. So this is going to be the front, and then I'll use these two lines to line up all three of these views, just making future work a little bit easier. So we're going to start with right side, which is the one we're actually looking at. Then we're going to have a front view and then a top view. So we're going to need two specific lines that we can see on all three views and line it up. So I'm going to choose this line right here, where the spinner is, and then the very right where that is already, right here. So then if we switch to the top view, you got the line right there, you got the line right there. So this is going to go 180. Now this specific picture is not linear from front to back, so there is some asymmetry. So basically you have to just pick one side and stick with it. Otherwise it can look a little bit funky once you finish. This is just lining this guy up as best as we can. As you can see right here, it is not centered here, but it is fairly centered there. So I'm just going to center it in the front here, just like that. And then we're going to have to move this back just a tad. So that's not what I wanted to do. Okay, bring it back to 75, 7. All right, so then we're gonna line up the front here. So if we look at it, we're gonna need two lines again that we can actually line up on here. So I'm gonna take this guy and I'm gonna line it right up with the top of the spinner there, and then I'm gonna take this line and line it up with the highest point on the model. There you go, that's fairly lined up. And then you can correct this once you actually have the model. You don't actually need this view all that often, so. All right, so they're all lined up now. You can delete that because we won't need it. There are multiple ways to go about this, but I'm just gonna do it the way I did before. I found that worked decently. So we're gonna start in the front here. We're just gonna scale this down and line it up right there. We're gonna make sure everything is centered, which it is now. And we're gonna highlight the back here. I'm pressing C to get this little circle that allows you to highlight absolutely everything within it. It makes it really easy to do this. You can also just right click with the face. And then I'm gonna scale out, just pressing S, not pressing anything else, and lining it up, and then you'll scale the top from front to back once you got the entire shape needed. So, because this is where it starts, and I pulled up a picture here, you can see it's completely straight right here, or fairly, so there's no real crease. We're gonna need the widest point, which should be this line right here, to be lined up right here. So for that, I'm just gonna do this so that way I can accurately see what I'm looking at. And then this right here can be cut out. We won't need it after this, so. And then we'll continue scaling back. Scale up. And then what we have to remember is on this plane, this is not the bottom right here. This is a separate part right here. So really we want the fuselage to end right here, and then we'll add on that piece later. So, all right, here's what we got, what we're looking at here. This right here needs to be edited just a little bit. And then what we're gonna do is, this is the widest point right here. And do that. I'm gonna cut it down the center so I don't have to do it twice. So how you do that is you go to the vertice mode, you press Z, and then you press B, and then this allows you to draw a box and highlight everything in that box. Then we're just gonna delete the vertices by pressing X. And then we're gonna add a mirror modifier, which is found right here. And because these are all centered, it should work perfectly fine, but this got deleted. So you just do Control Z and do that. And there it is. All right, so we're gonna start on this side. I'm gonna grab these two. We're gonna extrude them like that, and then there are multiple ways to do this, but this is just the way I found that worked. So we're gonna trace the lines right here. We're not gonna meet them in the middle because we have the mirror modifier, so we'll just join those later and pretend those are met up. Okay. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this bottom section, we're gonna line it up where it belongs right here, because that's where we want it. I'm gonna delete this because we don't need that, because it ends right here, so track that back. Okay, now we need to add another line, so we're going to do Control R, click, and then you can place it wherever you'd like. We'll put it right there. We're going to press C, highlight them all, and then we're just going to drag them down like that. We can do this as many times as you feel like until you get the shape you are looking for. That's all personal preference, and this will all get smoothed out in the end. I will not be using subsurface modifiers during this, so everyone's aware and no one gets disappointed. Okay, so what we can do with this is we can actually highlight this. This can, so basically the bottom part of this is creating the inside of the intakes of this, so this part's not really going to be visible when you render it until you texture it or use specific lighting. However, you still want it to look decent, preferably. So. And there are multiple ways to do absolutely everything in this program, so there is no right or wrong. So if you find another way, use what's best for you. But this is just what I typically like to do. cycles, and I'm going to do this so I can see what it looks like once it's rendered. So I'm going to change my lamp to sun so you get those shadowed effects like that. We're in cycles. I like my environment to be a little bit brighter. There you go. And that you can mess around with, and lighting makes it look differently depending where you put the sun and all that sort of stuff, or the lamp in this case. Yeah. And nice thing about this is none of this is permanent, so you can edit the inside of this whenever you feel like. I'm just doing it now because it's kind of getting in the way, so. And the big thing, because you're using the mirror modifier, is to make sure you don't pull on the x-axis here, because you will goof things up, and that just gives yourself a lot of work, which I deal with the last time I did this. Not fun, so I don't recommend it. Now what you could do, because of the way we have this set up, is in order to do this part under the belly right here, you can actually move this so it makes the correct shape. I might experiment with that at some point. It's just kind of about the way you want to do things and how comfortable you are with doing that sort of thing. So here's what we got. I'm going to use the smooth surface. I'm going to change the angle to 45. That's what we're looking at. So the problem we run into is this goes all the way up here. So I like this, extrude it, drag it up like that. So yeah, it's looking a little bit more correct. There you go. And this should actually come in like this. Alright, now, this is a little bit of patchwork, so highlighting all these faces, and sometimes you just gotta undo it and try it again, so, because it's kind of hard to tell how it's gonna come out until you finish. So like that right there. Shouldn't have deleted the face that went there, so I'm gonna do that. Delete faces. And I'm just doing shift and I'm clicking 2 lines and pressing F, and that seals it up. So on strange shapes like you got here, you're gonna have to highlight more than what you would normally do, so it doesn't intersect with the geometry that's already there. Okay, so clearly we want this to be a lot smoother than that, so we're just gonna do Control R and we're gonna add little points there. Give it a much smoother look. So here we go. So let's see, we're gonna need to find a picture of the underside of this. So this is just finding reference images. That's entirely up to you and how much work you want to put into that. This is not what we're looking for, so, oh, here we go. Maybe. This. Okay, so if you look at this, these are triangles almost that come in and they just kind of blend in just like that. So we're gonna need to do that, which could be slightly challenging. So basically we are making a triangle that starts, it goes right here, so we're gonna add a line. We can use that to make that smoother, just because why waste it? What we're gonna do is first we're gonna patch this up, just so that way we have nice geometry to work with. And this part is gonna require some cutting faces and rejoining, because it is a generally complex shape. So then things like this I typically like to fix before things get too complicated. It's gonna make your life a whole lot easier. Okay, so basically what we're looking for is right here, this face and up, we need a triangle, so we're gonna join it with this right here. So we're gonna delete all these faces, and we're gonna need to go back a little ways because it clearly goes into the intake. If you find a better picture, I know this because I found a better picture earlier. So what we're gonna do is delete those faces. Yeah, we're gonna delete those. Then join those right there. Okay, now this can be the difficult part. So I'm gonna highlight these two faces to make a triangle. I'm gonna do the same down here, and that's just gonna kind of give it a little bit of a more curved shape so it doesn't look so awkward. It's still gonna look a little awkward, but this part is quite hidden from anyone looking at it. So this right here will not be visible. Nothing inside will, only this part right here. I'm gonna add a line. I'm gonna curve this a little more because it is not that triangular. Okay. And then we're gonna seal this part up right here. And I'm gonna seal everything up as well. Let's see, so we're gonna start at the top. Because we have the mirror modifier, we cannot go across like this, like I typically would. Okay. This geometry can be a little bit awkward here. It's kind of up to your personal preference how you want to go about it. I do not like this triangle here, so I'm going to try to get rid of that a little bit. So this right here, take that, and we're going to take all of this, 3, and we're going to extrude it like that. So this is one of the most complex parts on this specific airplane. So it should when the pictures start coming back like this. So we're gonna have to make that. And I'm just adding cuts to get the correct shape. You can do this however you want. You can even make those a separate part if you want to. Wouldn't recommend it though, because then it doesn't flow with the rest of it. Like this specific part right here is probably the most important. There we go, now we have that. These flaps are separate, so we can add those later, don't worry about those. So we are gonna continue back like to this, to the cockpit. And I'm just pressing E, and that's gonna go straight out from where that face is. And then I am dragging it based on the arrows. So this dissolves into the fuselage. So this part needs to almost be flat with this. So we're gonna need to take this. I'm gonna take this geometry here and I'll fix it later. I'm just stuffing it into the corner so I don't have to worry about it too much as of now. Now, if you left it like this, you get some really weird shading because of it, and nothing's gonna flow. Like things like this happen. So you really don't want to leave it like that. You want to make it kind of flow, you know, so you got everything working together. This should not be there. So what I did is I just deleted it because there was a vertex there that shouldn't have been there. Clean it up a little bit. I'm gonna drag this up. I'm gonna drag this guy down, and then bring it all together. Just like that. So you get some weird shadows, and that's because of this right here. So that is fairly blendy. We can actually bring this all down like this to get a little bit of a curve. And if you're trying to keep it simple, this little detail right here actually isn't even needed, and it could be considered over complifying the thing. So this got poked out. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna, on the y-axis, this green arrow, we're gonna copy that location by doing just Control-C when you click on it up here. And just in case you don't have this menu, press N to hide that and bring it back out. And then we're gonna click each one of these faces here, and we're gonna paste that location. All right, that is incorrect. So, okay, that's the Z. Okay. Due to its location, Z is the correct one we need to be looking at, which is going this way. So. Paste the Z location for this one, so all this is lined up with it, and you get that nice flatness right there. Okay, everything is basically set. So now you don't get that weird shadow. It looks fairly clean. Not too bad. All right. So now we're gonna go up here. We're gonna look at it. So you can see this pokes out too much. This right here. So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to highlight all of this we want to move it all together, so this entire thing, so that we don't get some stuff not in place, because we already gave it the shape that we were looking for. So let's go look at this. Okay. Actually, this can be brought out a little bit because it does not narrow in quite like that. Okay. Okay, so now we're extruding out to the back of the plane. We're not gonna go quite that far yet. So this part right here, the upper portion, let's see if we have a picture of it. We'll just go 40. This is the 2C version, so if you were wanting to model that, you wouldn't have to worry about that. Here we go. So this is actually a part of the entire fuselage. So we want to make sure that our geometry covers that, and then when we cut out where the cockpit's going to be, that just flows with the rest of the aircraft. So what we're going to do is going to scale it up like this. We're just going to match generally where it is. You don't have to be so precise here because this is all going to be separate pieces. This part you have to be precise on though. Okay, so from what we can see, the bottom is this line right here, so we can actually take this and drag it down. So it matches that, and then we're gonna actually, before we do that, this part should actually be a lot shorter, so this should cave in just a little. Give us that look. This got off place somehow, so we can just go to X, make it 0. Okay, now we're gonna continue back to the tail. I'm only scaling on the Z-axis because we're gonna do the X-axis in a second. So the fuselage comes all the way up here. Now you can make this as many cuts as you want. You can do it now, do it later. It's really up to you. You do need this point to be lined up like that. Okay. That looks fairly good. Looks like we had a little bit of an issue with highlighting faces here, so we're gonna just undo that. Highlight that. You want to make sure you have everything highlighted and not do what I did, because if you don't see that and then later you apply modifiers and everything and then you look at it, it's gonna be real funky. And that can happen in very, very tiny places depending what your geometry is. Alright, so if we look, it is fairly lined up in the front, and if we go to the back, I don't look right. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start on the back, and we're gonna make sure we got the right width there, and then we're just gonna follow this roughly. We're gonna eyeball it and make sure that we don't overdo anything. Now, if you do some more searching and you find blueprint that is symmetrical, definitely use that, because this is quite a pain in a lot of cases. This is not centered. Neither is this. This all got jacked up. Let's see where it started. Way up here. Okay. This is gonna require some work. So let's just say you do not want to redo all that. You just spent a lot of work lining it up. You're just gonna have to highlight each and every one and make sure it is centered on X. And don't forget, the bottom is probably in the same situation. So you're gonna have to go around the top, the bottom, and if you miss one, just one, you're gonna mess your entire thing up once you apply the mirror modifier. And what it does is it's just overlapping. It's mirroring based on the axis you put it on. So in this case, the y-axis. So you want these centered based on that. So it mirrors exactly where that vertex is. So as you can see, and the further you get back, the more messed up it gets. And this is fairly common when you're doing complex things like you did in the front here. Typically, you can miss something, and that's what happens. So these are not centered. It's a little bit hard to tell with these simply because it's not curved, so you can't see them overlapping until you try to move one, and all of a sudden there's another face under it, and that's when you realize you messed up. Yep. And we're just cruising down. Don't have to worry about these because we're going to actually join those in a little bit. There we go. So everything should be centered. We're going to get rid of our modifier, make sure. Yep, there it is. If you have faces in the inside, that will also mess it up. So typically if you undo one and you extrude, you're going to end up, like, let's say one is not centered and then you extrude, you're going to end up with faces on the inside, which nobody likes. So we're just going to press C, highlight them all. Now I'm actually going to get rid of these as well because we don't need them. And then because I did not like this, I'm going to delete that as well. Just strange geometry. Not what I like to see. This isn't straight, but oh well, what can you do? So that's what it should look like. And I'm going to make sure this guy's centered, which it isn't. And we're going to apply the mirror. Now it should be working correctly. Alright, so we're going to go up top. We're going to come down here, and we're going to find our top view. Also, as far as putting these in, someone mentioned in the comments of one of my videos, you can actually just go from your files and drag it into Blender, drag and drop. So that makes life a lot easier than looking through here. So thank you to the guy who did that. Definitely makes life a lot easier. So we're just gonna, so this is the center line right here. So we want to line it up with that. So that's a 7. That's close enough. You don't want to be specific on the, or super detailed when it comes to that stuff, simply because it is very wacky in this specifically. Okay. So we're actually gonna take a look at the tail here. As you can see, it is still round, even though it is a little bit flatter, so it is not this flat. So before we start squeezing everything together, we want to fix that, because that could be quite annoying. This is something you could have fixed up here. I just didn't think about it till now, which is pretty common when it comes to me and modeling. I typically screw that stuff up a lot. We're going to do that so it kind of blends together a little bit. I'm going to grab these three. Now the reason it is changing like that, like you see it's sharp and then it starts morphing, is because I have auto smooth on. You will not see that if you don't have that. So let me demonstrate. We're gonna go flat. So you can see you don't see that anymore. And smooth. It makes a very big difference in the way it looks. Now this is fairly time consuming, this little part right here, but it's a big part of the model in general. So still there. You can see that little bubble there. We need to get rid of that. So what we can also do is we can get that back view so we can see what's really going on here. So we just want this to be a little bit sharper. We're gonna highlight all of this. That is not the correct, is it? It is, okay. Sorry, it looked a little bit funky. Drag that up. And then from here, down there, just gonna drag all this out a little bit. Because of the geometry, you get this overlapping face right there, the way I have it laid out. So this needs to be lower than that. Or I could edit what's inside here, which I will also do. So these, I'm gonna bring it down here. This right here is a problem, so delete those faces. And then I'm actually going to delete these as well, because this is okay, and this is not. So, alright, so we're going to start here. Yes, we can. So I'm gonna cut this by doing Control R. separates this line into two. And grab these two, join it. Now we have a square there, which is a little bit better. We're gonna add another one, so we have something for this to join onto. And then we're gonna add one right here, so we can make a quad face right there. The idea is to make them all quads, if you can. So, we can actually extrude this on the z-axis. There you go. Okay, we still end up with a triangle, so I do want to get rid of that. 1, 2, 3, 4. There it is. And then you can make this look pretty if you want. I'm going to. Makes working with it later a little bit easier. Okay, that is not a bad shape. Cool. So we're gonna start up here. We're gonna apply the mirror modifier, and this is why. So we can highlight the entire, I don't know, you can highlight all these points right here. And all you do is you go S to scale, and then you press X, and you're only doing it along the X axis. Makes life very easy when it comes to this, because it's all uniform from on the X axis, so everything is symmetric. At least on most planes. Some, not so much. So this is where you can really see where these lines get in your way. So, because if I lined it up with where the line is, that doesn't look right. It's supposed to get wider. So we're just gonna eyeball that. This needs to be just about there. Make sure that's centered, which it is. This is very difficult to do. So it's the same width as the nose. I made this too wide. And then right here is where it changes and it starts to shrink. So that is the shape we're looking for. The back needs to be much more narrow, because it actually blends into the rudder if you look at it. So it's got to be about the same width as the rudder that you have there. Alright, this is not looking bad. So now that we have the mirror modifier that's been applied, we can seal this up. So what we're doing is grabbing one side. So I'm going to grab this side. I'm going to grab this side, and I'm going to press F. That's going to seal them together. I'm going to do that for all of these lines. I'm just going to do the outside and the inside. Okay, so we got to do the inside now, so I'm going to press 5 so I can actually get these really funky views. Seal all of this up. And then in case we need to add a mirror again, I'm going to put a line down the middle so I don't have to redo that later. And there it is. That's your P-40 fuselage, which is actually fairly complex. So now we are going to go into our edge selection mode. And then we're gonna press Alt, and then we're gonna right click on this right here, and it selects the entire loop. So that command, you can select any of these entire loops that go all the way around. Typically useful for this. And then we're gonna press E, click, and then we're just gonna press S. We're gonna scale in just like that. And we're gonna press 3, get that side view, and then we're gonna press E, press Y. This gets along the Y axis. And the reason we are doing this is because this is open right here. So you can actually see what the engine is. We're gonna put something there. You can add as much detail as you would like in there. You can add all the wires and whatnot. It's really up to you. Then I'm gonna press F. That's just gonna seal it back there, because you will not see it through the front because you got a spinner on there. So you don't have to worry about it. Alright, now we're gonna do this part under the aircraft. So we're gonna press A, Shift A, and we're gonna add a cube. We're gonna center it because this is centered. We're gonna scale it down, press 1. Judging by pictures, we know it's very curved and it's just more narrow than the actual fuselage. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna scale this out, scale this in, drag it out. We're gonna get the right length. So this is basically acting as the bottom. This is acting as the top, which needs to be all the way inside the fuselage. You can union these later, and then you can add, bevels or whatever you would like to get that smooth transition. It's completely up to you. We're gonna go S, and then we're gonna press X so we can scale out along that axis and get that round shape we're looking for. You can make this as round as you want to. Again, personal preference. So this right here, it actually goes all the way in to what you got here, your exhaust, I guess we'll call it. I don't know what you would actually call that. I know this is the intake, but I don't know. Research project right there. But we're gonna extrude it, narrow it, make it kind of blend in. We're gonna extrude this width-wise because this is actually about the same width as this. It takes up quite a bit of it, and it's taller, just like that. There isn't much distance between this and that. However, the second it gets outside of it, it begins to shrink. So, or get smaller. Yeah. Go like this. 9. Drag this back. We're gonna shrink it again. That's okay right there. This is all based right here, so we're gonna shrink it again, and then we're gonna extrude that. And then we're just following the lines. And then I'm scaling on the Z-axis, just so that way it kind of is a little bit more of a smooth transition. Now, you could actually make this entire part right here, which would look a lot better than this, out of this fuselage by manipulating these vertices right here. But that's going to take quite a bit more work. And for this little tutorial here, I'm not going to go over that. However, if you want to experiment with that, we kind of already did that sort of thing right here. So you can do that if you would like to. So right here doesn't look quite right, so we want this to be fairly straight, and then it's gonna narrow out back here. There it is. It doesn't look half bad. So, we're gonna smooth this out just so it matches everything else. We're gonna click this little triangle thing here. I did this earlier, and on this one you don't really need it, but I'm gonna do it anyway, in case I need to change something. What it does is it smooths on a 45-degree angle, and it gets rid of those shadows. So let's say I get rid of it. As you can see right here, it's trying to smooth all this out inside when really you want that to be a hard angle. You want this to be a hard angle. So if you do that, anything over 45 degrees, it's not going to smooth. So it doesn't smooth these angles right here. At least that's my understanding. If I am wrong, please let me know down in the comments of this video. So now we're gonna make this scoop right here on top. So as we can see, it's fairly rounded, so we're gonna just put a little center point there, highlight these, drag them down like that. And then we're gonna add more points and round it out. Okay, there we are, and then we're gonna drag this all the way to the front where it belongs. Perfect, and it doesn't stick out the bottom either. That's something you want to look out for. Unless you're going to union it with everything else, which I would very recommend doing at the very end, because if you do something incorrect, you're going to want to fix it. And you're not going to be able to if you union it and delete your other parts. So, I'm going to bring this up a little bit. So right here, just following the lines, kind of, because this is an imperfect blueprint, you do not want to follow it super closely, because then you could get some really weird shapes. That looks okay. It actually looks a lot more roundy than that, so I'm gonna make it more roundy. Is that much better? So, so we'll hollow this out later. Okay, so now we are going to do the wing, elevator, and the rudder. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a cube, press Z. This is the airfoil that goes throughout the entire wing, even though it changes a little bit here and there. So we're going to copy this. Realistically, you could probably use made up airfoil and get away with it, but that can lead you into some trouble with strange looks of the airplane. So I like to follow these as best as possible. Assuming it's correct, of course. Alright, so it gets very narrow at the end here. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure everything looks correct. The top and bottom oftentimes are not symmetric on these, so you need to be aware of that. Like the top here is much more round than the bottom. That looks okay. So that is at the wingtip. As we can see, it is much more narrow than right here. So I'm just going to drag this down and we're going to press SZ. We're going to scale this up. This may not be accurate to the actual airplane. Oftentimes the airfoil does change on wings throughout it. As you can see, this is going to be much more longer right here. So again, that's up to you, and oftentimes blueprints will actually give you sections of the wing that show the airfoil changes. So if you can find one of those for whatever you're deciding to do, that is fantastic to use. They also have those for the fuselage as well on some complex airplanes. So very much recommended. We're going to try and make this follow the geometry a little bit. Alright, that's not too bad. So here's something that we're going to run into. This is at an angle, which can make any sort of scaling a little bit wonky. And it can make things twist around and look terrible, so you want to be very careful of that. We're actually going to... I'm pressing Z twice, so instead of doing it on the... so basically, how do I explain this? You have the world Z-axis, which is straight up and down, and then you have the object Z-axis. And because I rotated that, all the axes are now rotated. So if you got X, and that's the X according to the object's rotation. That's the best way I can think of explaining it. There's probably a better way. And if there is, feel free to leave it in the comments as well for other people. Okay, so we're just making it go right into the fuselage because we can either union this later or we could just leave it the way it is. It's up to you and what you want to do personally. I'm going to add the smooth shader and I'm going to put it at a 45 angle again. And you can mess around with the angles here too and get different looks. It's all up to preference. So I'm going to extrude this all the way out to this point right here, where it's all a straight line. So let's go back there. As you see, if I just press Z and scale down, it's actually rotating all these vertices, which is not what we want. So we're going to press S, Z twice, so it's not twisting anymore when you do that. And if you don't have that option, you can always just rotate it back, but things get really out of control on complex structures. So we're going to scale on the Y-axis, and we're going to get it to line up with what we got right here. Only thing is, this line right here looks like it should be right there, which is another problem with the blueprint. So we're going to go to the blueprint here. We're looking for top. See, that's not the right one. We're going to go, yes, we're going to go change this to like 5 maybe. Oh, we're going to need to go a lot more than that, so we're going to change it to 3. Oh, maybe just 2? 2. That's the lucky number. All right. Actually, all right, we'll just go with that. This blueprint is not a good example for what we're doing here. So if your blueprint is symmetric, definitely follow it. Because this is showing the fuselage ending right here, we're going to need a line that's more like this. So we're actually going to have to drag all these back. In order to make this bigger or smaller, you just use the scroll wheel, in case anyone was wondering. And then this geometry, we want it to match as closely as possible so we get a nice smooth surface when we look at it, because if you look at this point, it is actually a part of the airfoil. So if that doesn't match up with this, you could have like a weird line going down right there, and it just doesn't look right. It's like this, you'd want to smooth out, edit, make sure it looks the way you want it to. This back edge could be a lot thinner, so I'm actually gonna make this thinner right here. Just like that, and because this is such a long line to the wingtip, don't have to worry about any changes because it would be hard to see there. Doesn't look too bad. This is all down to preference on what levels of detail you want to take. Now the y-axis never changed when we rotated. So when we rotate the wing. So we don't actually need to double press that. We only need to press it one time. However, if you're concerned in a slight difference, you could always press it twice. I kind of do it out of habit. Doesn't harm anything or change anything, so. So we're gonna come out to the wingtip here, and we're gonna scale that down really small. So the wingtip is oftentimes the most tricky because this is where all the points get really, really close together. And it can start getting some really weird shapes really fast. So this all needs to be fairly straight. And the nice thing is this all right here, oh wait, there you go. This all right here this is a fairly straight line, and same with the top, so it makes doing this eyeballing stuff a little bit easier. We can make this super narrow because that is this portion right here, literally the wingtip. So now you can see the smooth shading doing some weird stuff there, so we can add another point and smooth it out a bit. Mostly the leading edge is where it's needed. This right here goes front to highlight this. This can actually be longer like that. All right. Now we're just gonna do Control R and we're gonna add points. Grab the back 3 is typically a good rule. And the reason you're grabbing more than one is so you don't get a really weird shape. You want this airfoil to go all the way through. So that's not a bad looking wing. So we can grab that. We can add the mirror modifier and click on the fuselage. And there we are. So those are your basic wings. You can do more detail, less detail. It's really up to you in that situation. So we're gonna do the elevator, which is basically the same thing as the fuselage, except it's a little bit easier because you don't have dehedral, which is basically that angle. This angle right here is the angle of dehedral. The elevator is perfectly flat. Now on this blueprint, these right here do not line up with these. So but it should be slightly below where the fuselage is, where the top of it is at the tail, which is right here, and right here it would be well above it. So Alright, so this is way over here, so we're gonna center this. And then we're gonna go down to our picture, and we're gonna center the fuselage so we get an accurate shape. Typically, blueprints aren't quite this bad. This is a really bad one, but it works for what we're doing. So here's the airfoil I ended up with. The elevator does have its own airfoil, so it's not just a block sitting there, in case anyone was curious. That's a good point right there. So I'm looking for where the front and the back hit the lines at the same time. So the lines of the elevator. So that is where that airfoil belongs. So now from here, I can drag this right here. And then we can grab these two, drag them down like that. Control R. At a point, we're gonna grab two of these together because they're fairly spaced out, and then we're gonna extrude that. Go, and then we're just adding points and lining it up with the lines to get that nice smooth shape that we are looking for. Now, if you are using a new version of Blender, originally the controls are going to be, or the hotkeys and whatnot are going to be quite a bit different than what I'm using. However, there are ways to change the settings and revert them to the old method, so you can use the same controls. I just like the way the interface is on the older version, so that is why I'm using it. What I'm trying to do is get this rounded shape that is right here. That, except this needs to be back like that. That looks alright. I'm going to take this, extrude it, scale it on the y-axis. Now, if you're looking to add control surfaces, there are two ways to do this. You could do it the way where, the way I do it, which is not efficient, and I need to learn a new way, but you can make the whole thing and then cut out the shape of the elevator, or you can just make the part that is not the control surface. So this line right here, you would follow that pattern right there, and then you would make this a separate part. Both ways work, it's just personal preference. So that is if you're doing control surfaces. So we can see this looks a little bit funky because it needs to become narrow. It doesn't have that drastic of a change. And I'm gonna press 3. Okay, so you can see that the airfoil changed quite a bit because this line got compressed strangely. So, a couple ways to fix this. One way is to just shrink this down until you can't tell. Like that, you can't really tell anymore. And then the other way is you can actually manipulate all the lines first and get a nice chord going there, which would be this line, I believe. So that's up to personal preference. For the sake of time, I'm just going to do this, since I am not making this model for anybody. So we're going to mirror it. Get that look. As you can see, it does not line up. But what can you do, right? Alright, now for the rudder. We're going to scale this in. We're going to center it. And then this also has a sort of airfoil shape, so let's see, we do want this centered. Now this doesn't line up. I'm not going to realign it simply because there's no real need to. It's not that complex. It's there you go. And this starts narrowing out more and more until you get to here, where it is very narrow. And we're gonna scale this down like this. And then we're gonna find the point where it should be. I'm gonna put it right there. Actually, I'm gonna put it right here. Never mind. We're gonna grab this entire line and we're gonna extrude it. And then we're gonna grab just this back part, because this all right here is all the rudder we need. So we're gonna bring this down right here. And then right here, what you would do is you would both change the rudder and the fuselage right here so they line up nice and neat, which can be done at any point in time. So drag this up like that, get a nice shape. Okay, I do not like the way this looks because it doesn't look smooth. So we're gonna grab these and we're gonna drag them out so it's got the more smooth sort of look to it. It does need to be a little bit more narrow in my opinion, so I'm gonna shrink that down now. Now we begin with the top half. So we're just gonna extrude it all the way up to where this straight line begins to curve. It should be right here. I'm gonna scale on the, or I'm gonna select the whole thing and scale on the y-axis until it matches the lines that we have here. I'm gonna do Control R, grab these back three, drag them back, curve it out a little bit. We're gonna grab the top here, we're gonna extrude, scale on the y-axis again. Do it again. Now, we're gonna round this out a little bit. And then we're gonna smooth it out. Now we got a strange little line right here, which I do not like at all. So we're gonna get rid of it. Grab it, scale that down. I can see exactly where it is. And I'm just scaling it down to match the one that is the line that's in front of it. As you can see, it's mostly gone. Grab those two. This can be narrowed. And then just to finish off this video, we're gonna make the spinner, which is very simple. I'm gonna add a cylinder, rotate it 90 degrees, center it, press Z so we can get a better view of how far in it is. And we're gonna line it up with this right here, and we're gonna try to make it generally the same size. The real airplane did have a little gap right here, so that is okay. Alright, now we're gonna go to face mode simply because it's a little bit easier. This also is not symmetrical, it's very funky, but I'm gonna follow the top of it, ignore the bottom. We're gonna smooth that out. We're not gonna move it because we don't want to. Okay. You get a weird shadow here. And let's use the 45-degree angle, goes away. There we are. That is the first part of the P40 tutorial. I'll be working on the second and third one hopefully shortly. And thank you all for watching.